When My Cousin Vinny hit theaters in 1992, it didn't look like the kind of movie that would become a classic, a fish-out-of-water comedy about a brash New York lawyer stumbling his way through a murder trial in rural Alabama. It sounded like the kind of mid-tier studio release that would make a little money, get a few laughs, and then fade away. But something magical happened. Joe Pesci's Vinny Gambini was hilarious and unforgettable, a streetwise underdog you couldn't help but root for. And then there was Marisa Tomei as Mona Lisa Vito, his sharp-tongued, no-nonsense fiancé whose courtroom testimony not only turned the trial around, but also won Tomei an Academy Award. The film became a cult classic, revered not just for its humor, but for its surprisingly accurate portrayal of courtroom procedure. Law professors and judges have even used it to teach legal strategy, pointing to the precision of its cross-examinations. But buried inside this seemingly airtight script was a problem. A hole in the logic so big that it could have unraveled the entire case. For decades, nobody noticed. Audiences, critics, lawyers, even car enthusiasts let it slide. But then, long after the film had cemented its place in pop culture, the truth came out. The climactic testimony that saved two innocent lives, the very speech that earned Marisa Tomei her Oscar, was technically wrong. And once you hear it, you can't unhear it. The flaw. Mona Lisa Vito swore on the witness stand that in the 1960s there were only 2 American cars with independent rear suspension and positive traction powerful enough to leave the flat, even tire marks seen in the evidence photo. Her statement was delivered with so much authority that it silenced the courtroom and shattered the prosecution's case. But in reality, there weren't just 2 such cars. There were 3, and the one left out was a Chevy Corvair. That oversight means that technically speaking, Lisa's testimony, and by extension Vinny's whole defense, was incomplete. To understand why this matters, we have to revisit the legendary courtroom scene. Vinny, finally finding his footing after stumbling through procedural disasters, puts his fiancée on the stand. He shows her a photo of the tire tracks left by the getaway car. Lisa explains that if the defendant's car, a 1964 Buick Skylark, had made those tracks, the left tire's elevation on the curb would have forced the right tire to tilt. Instead, the tracks are perfectly flat. That meant the car in question had independent rear suspension. Lisa then drops her mic moment. Only 2 American cars from the 1960s fit that description with enough similarity to the Skylark. One was the Corvette, which could never be mistaken for a Skylark. The other was the 1963 Pontiac Tempest, which looked nearly identical. The implication was devastating for the prosecution. The defendant's Skylark couldn't have been the getaway car. Case dismissed. The scene works brilliantly because it fuses comedy, tension, and technical detail. Tomei's performance is flawless, quick, confident, and biting. She tears through Vinny's questioning with wit and sarcasm, mocking the opposing counsel's ignorance while dazzling the jury. It's the kind of cinematic moment that audiences cheer for. And in 1993, the Academy agreed, handing Tomei the Oscar for Best Supporting Actress. The film, modest in its ambitions, had suddenly produced one of the most memorable performances of the decade. But here's where the plot hole comes in. Years later, Dale Launer, the screenwriter behind My Cousin Vinny, admitted that he had fudged the facts. In an interview marking the film's 25th anniversary, Launer confessed that Lisa's testimony wasn't strictly accurate. There were actually 3 cars, not 2. He said the missing one was the Chevrolet Corvair, a model infamous for its safety flaws and later immortalized in Ralph Nader's book Unsafe at Any Speed. The Corvair had the same independent suspension system and the same technical ability to produce those flat tire marks, which means Lisa's confident declaration wasn't entirely true. Why did Launer leave out the Corvair? He admitted he figured nobody would notice. I thought, well, no one's really going to know that, he explained, and for a long time he was right. The film's fans were too swept up in the humor and drama to nitpick. Even car buffs let it slide. It wasn't until decades later that people started pointing out the oversight. One old high school friend even teased Launer at the film's premiere. You know, there were actually 3 cars with independent rear suspension. By then, it was too late. The movie had already cemented its reputation, so what does this mean for the film? On the surface, not much. The courtroom drama still works, Lisa's testimony is still iconic, and the humor still lands. But for those who love dissecting movies, especially ones that pride themselves on technical accuracy, the Corvair-shaped hole is a fascinating discovery. It reveals just how much audiences are willing to forgive if the story is compelling enough. In real life, a prosecutor could have dismantled Lisa's argument in seconds by bringing up the Corvair. But in the world of My Cousin Vinny, the jury is enthralled, the judge is impressed, and the defendants walk free. This revelation also adds a layer of irony. My Cousin Vinny is famous among legal professionals for being one of the most accurate courtroom films ever made. Judges cite it in lectures, law professors show it in class, and lawyers use it to explain cross-examination tactics. The film is often praised for getting right what so many other legal dramas get wrong, and yet at its most crucial moment, it gets a major fact about cars wrong. That's the beauty of cinema. Accuracy matters, but storytelling matters more. The Corvair oversight also highlights the nature of screenwriting itself. Writers often bend or compress facts to make a scene flow better. Lawner admitted he didn't do much research for Lisa's testimony. Instead, he relied on his own encyclopedic memory of cars from his youth. There was no research whatsoever, he said. That's what I would call misspent youth. He had grown up memorizing car stats, weights, horsepower, suspensions, and used that knowledge to craft Lisa's speech. It felt real, it sounded authoritative, and that was enough. And maybe that's why the error has only made the film more beloved. Fans don't see it as a flaw so much as a quirk, a hidden detail that makes the movie even more fun to analyze. It's like spotting a continuity error in a classic film, or catching a hidden Easter egg. The Corvair doesn't ruin My Cousin Vinny. If anything, it gives people another reason to revisit it, to debate it, to marvel at how such a beloved scene could rest on shaky ground. There's also something poetic about Mona Lisa Vito herself being the center of this debate. In the film, she's the truth teller, the one who cuts through the nonsense with her technical knowledge and no-nonsense attitude. To learn that her testimony wasn't 100% correct in real life almost feels like a meta joke, as if the character herself was bluffing, and the jury just bought it. It makes her Oscar-winning performance even more layered. 30 years later, the Corvair revelation hasn't dimmed the film's legacy. My Cousin Vinny is still one of the most quoted comedies of the 1990s. Lawyers still love it, fans still laugh at it, and Marissa Tomei's performance remains a high-water mark in courtroom cinema. If anything, the plot hole has made the movie more interesting. It reminds us that even the most accurate films are still works of fiction, shaped by the choices of their writers and directors. In the end, the Corvair might have been left out of the script, but it can't take away from what My Cousin Vinny achieved. It's a comedy that turned into a classic, a courtroom drama that lawyers respect, and a showcase for one of the most memorable supporting performances in film history. The missing car is just a footnote, an amusing detail that gives fans one more thing to talk about when they revisit the movie. Because really, what's more Vinny than that? A case that isn't quite airtight, a witness whose testimony isn't entirely accurate, and a jury that goes along with it anyway. In a way, the Corvair plot hole isn't a flaw at all. It's perfectly in character with the messy, hilarious, and oddly brilliant world of My Cousin Vinny.